Collins & Co.'s not-for-profit conference, Be Empowered Through Knowledge, is designed specifically for the not-for-profit sector. Our speakers are experts in this sector, and their practical approach provides not-for-profit board members and management with the opportunity to improve their skills and knowledge across a range of specialist topics. The conference also provides a great networking opportunity.
So would you please welcome Katrina?
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you everyone for attending the room, and a special thank you to those who are watching via the live streaming. It's my great pleasure to be here today, especially on this wonderful hallowed ground of the MCG. As a long-serving Richmond member, I'm a very proud member to have won the grand final last year, and yes, I was here. So I was one of the lucky members who got a ticket in the ballot, so very good. So you might have thought to yourself, well, why would we be discussing leadership, and why is leadership a new way of doing business? Can you hear me all right still? Well, the way we see it is leadership is imperative to your business success. So for many of you in not-for-profits or even in the for-profit business, you would tend to send people or send your staff along to management training courses and development training courses that are quite technically natured, or they're very theoretical. We take a different approach to that, and so part of what I want to explain to you today is the approach we take to developing leaders in what is rural and regional Victoria in our case. So let's talk a little bit about VRCLP, and the acronym is much easier to say than the long company name. So we're a member-based organisation. We're based in Ballarat, and our members consist of 10 regional community leadership programs around all of regional Victoria. Our oldest program is our Gippsland program, which is now in its 23rd year. Our youngest program is Rivers and Ranges, which is in its 5th year, and they were established as a result of the Black Saturday bushfires. So collectively we have 10 member organisations, and our role is to strengthen the leaders, strengthen leadership across regional Victoria, and we're very passionate about that. So prior to VRCLP establishing in 2012, each of these, what was 9 entities at the time, would do their own thing. So they had a basic underlying model of methodology of delivering their leadership development programs, but they did their own thing. So VRCLP was established as a result of a couple of the programs saying, we need to have an overarching body that helps us to collaborate, to share, to not reinvent the wheel, and to make sure that we learn and we continue to grow. And one of our key functions is to measure the outcomes, which we'll talk a little bit further down in the presentation. So now we actively, 5.5 years later, collaborate, share, learn, challenge, grow, invest, you name it, we're doing it. And we like to think that one day we can help other states and territories actually have the model we have, because we're unique. Victoria is the only state or territory that has programs that operate in a region for their region. So as I briefly mentioned before, our purpose is to strengthen leadership across regional Victoria. And we do that in order to give people in regional areas the skills, the confidence and the capacity to make a better future for their communities. We don't prescribe what that is, they do that themselves, and we'll talk a little bit more about that further on. So in developing this presentation today, there's one thing that always resonates quite a lot in our programs, and I'm sure you're not alone. What's the difference between management and leadership? And so if I was to get $1 for every single time someone asked me the difference, I would be a millionaire and I wouldn't be having to work anymore. And in doing it, I thought, well, I'm going to do a bit of a Google search here, and most of us do Google searches. And Google tells us now that there is about 23.8 million definitions of management and about 162 million definitions of leadership. So we don't pretend to try and redefine what leadership is, but what we do is to try and get people to understand that there is a difference between leadership and management. So management is more about the things. It's the process of doing things. It's dealing with or controlling things or people in its simplest form. Leadership, as we define it, is about empowering people to do something. So it's the art of motivating people. It's getting them to do something that is something different. It's allowing a leader to step up and make a difference. A leader is someone who does the right thing, whereas a manager, I keep either pointing or something's not working, a manager does the things right. So it's that controlling factor. So management is usually assigned with a formal title. As you would know, you have a manager of HR, or you have the chief financial officer who's the manager of finances, and so that by its nature implies that they are doing things and they are controlling things. Leadership, in our perspective, is usually the quiet achiever or the not so quiet achiever who doesn't have the formal title. So if you think about in your own organisations, who are your natural leaders who may not have the formal titles that come with management positions, but they are the ones that are the people follow and aspire to be like in your organisations or in your boards and committees that you might be working in. And we believe these are the people that you as organisations and as community members should be investing your development time with, because managers by default will always get the professional development because it comes a lot of times with their titles. So the leaders, so the quiet achievers or your boards and committee members who really are making a significant difference are the ones that we believe you should be also investing in. So don't ignore those quiet achievers. Why am I not working? Now I am. All right, so as I mentioned before, VRCLP is made up of really the whole state of Victoria, apart from that little grey metropolitan area there, which we don't cover. So we don't go into the metropolitan area. That space is for the big players who work on the metropolitan space. Ours is about making a difference in regional Victoria. There are 10 of us all together, as I mentioned. We cover all of the local government areas across rural and regional Victoria. I know I was talking to Karen earlier and she's aware of our Great South Coast program, which is the blue one down here. And they're great supporters of Leadership Great South Coast, so we thank you for that. We put through approximately 240 people a year. So these are our community people who are new or aspiring leaders, or they are sometimes in a formal leadership position, and they go through our programs every year. The programs themselves are based on being experiential programs, so we don't shy away from the fact that they are not we dip you in one end and out the other end and then you suddenly have the word leader tattooed on your head, because everyone's leadership journey is different and it is unique to that individual. So to give you a little bit of a taste, I've got a couple of videos later on about some of our participants who've gone through that will demonstrate the journey that they've been on. Collectively now we have 3,500 graduates across the state who are all doing magnificent things, and magnificent can be defined in what they believe is magnificent. So they are our kindergarten mums, they are our local footy coaches and administrators, they are on boards and committees and making wonderful differences there. They are now the leaders within their industries or within their organisations. They are all doing wonderful things. They collectively collaborate as we collaborate. They share and mentor and guide other people who are coming through the programs, and they share their stories of encouragement to ensure that we understand the growth and the journey that they're going on. Across the state, in last year alone, we visited the programs, that is, participants visited approximately 96 regional locations. So they don't run a program in Melbourne, for example, and everyone has to come to Melbourne. They operate in their region to run for their regions. So our Great South Coast program is a really good example. They have program days in Warrnambool, in Portland, in Camberdown, in Hamilton. So all participants get to see and understand their regions and understand the issues and the opportunities that may present themselves. And just like all of us who come to Melbourne, they come to Melbourne, and some of them go to Canberra as well. And it's interesting when you listen to some of their stories, even though they live and work in regional towns, some of them don't even go out of their own regional towns. And, for them to have their awakening around what is accessible and what's available in their regions is pretty mind-blowing for a lot of people. As I said before, there are a number that go to Canberra and they spend a day with our federal politicians, and they explore what Canberra has to offer. By and large, apart from the question time in federal parliament, is pretty mind-blowing, and we've been there a few times when it's been things like dismissing of prime ministers and the events we had last year around citizenship. So they make for fun days, but we also visit the War Memorial, and we have afternoon tea with the Governor-General, and so they get to meet a lot of people who are quite influential in our country. And as I mentioned before, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. There we go. We all go to Melbourne and do a similar thing. So they come and spend time with Melbourne, and they spend a day with their Melbourne politicians or their members of parliament. The one thing that sets us aside from what would be normally a typical management or leadership training program as such is that a one-size-fits-all does not work. So, as I mentioned before, because we operate in that region, the programs have to be flexible enough to meet the needs and the desires and the strategic direction of what that region is reaching for. So they have to remain flexible. They have to ensure that their program content is applicable to what is occurring in their regions. Couple of little stunning stats. Just conscious of time. As I said before, there's about 240 participants every year. They average about, it's a little bit small, isn't it? About 183 hours each to go through a program year. Programs are around about 10 months. They meet every 2 weeks. That equates to about 44,000 odd hours that are done throughout the course of the year across the participants. We wouldn't be able to do what we do as any not-for-profit without the support of our supporters. They are our supporters, like South West Coast Community Foundation. They are the speakers who give their time freely to all of our participants. They are the mentors who've potentially gone through the programs before. They are our financial backers. So, it goes without saying, as I'm sure all of you in the room feel the same way, that we do thank all of our supporters in whatever way you support us. It's invaluable. But just again on some stats, so in last year alone, there were approximately 1,000 speakers who gave their time to all of our collective organisations. And that was about 4,500 hours of in-kind support that they provided to us. We have a little formula about how we measure in-kind support, which has been agreed by our major funder, the state government, which is a $45 rate per hour. So every stat I give you today is based on that $45 hour. And so that is a saving to us across the group of about $200,000 a year in that in-kind support alone. We also have a number of organisations that provide scholarships. Again, price should be no barrier to participants going through our programs, so we need to make sure that we're working with organisations to provide scholarships for those who may not be in employment to be able to participate, or they're in a small business that may not be able to afford the fees, which aren't exorbitant, by the way. As I mentioned before, we have mentors. There's about 114 last year. We then offer, post their year, we offer alumni masterclasses and things like that. So we look at what the group want or what the collective want. We certainly get a lot of requests for governance training. We have a lot of our graduates who want to go on to boards and committees. So we have a partnership with the Australian Institute of Company Directors to help them bring their programs to the regions, and we also deliver foundation ones ourselves to help them in their journey for those who want to come to boards. And then one of the tangible things we do, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, is that part of their year is to deliver a community project of some sort. So they actually get to learn on the job around leadership, and they actually have to work together across diverse teams. They have to advocate for funds, they have to apply for grants, they then have to project manage those projects, and they have to implement them, and then they have to report on them so that we can see the outcomes. So I've briefly talked a little bit about our framework, which, as I said before, it is an experiential program. As you can appreciate, with 10 different programs around the state, and we don't have a one-size-fits-all, there's lots of avenues in which we could have assessed how we work on this, but when we did a deep dive into what it is, some of the stuff that we're delivering, it really pointed to 4 key areas. We know that we have a competency assessment, or we build the competency around the person who's going through it, so about yourself and your understanding of self and your leadership skills and your interpersonal communication styles and things like that. We also have a huge impact on the community, so we get them to understand the regional issues and opportunities that exist and understand the cultural and diversity that may present itself in their own regions. We have a very big impact on business, so we get them to understand the importance of influencing skills, strategic foresight, innovation, project management, as I mentioned before, and really one of the key things that comes out of it time and time again is that ability to network and grow your networks. And then it goes without saying, given that we go to local council meetings and state, and some go federal, that there is a competency that is attained as far as the political sphere goes. So what we fundamentally do is we bridge the gap between economic and community development. So we're that kind of bridge that sort of, you've got your economic development people in your local councils and your state government wanting to do this, and we've got an arm that's around community development. We help to build the capacity so people can go off and do that accordingly. So we have a number of, one thing we do here every year in September, and we had it here at the G last year as a combined program day. So during the course of the year, obviously the participants are going through with their own cohorts. They actually form very strong friendships with and networks with. But once a year we bring as many as we can to Melbourne so they actually can cross network with other people going through other programs, and that's been very successful. We teach them things around thoughtful questioning, adaptive leadership, presentation skills, time management, hopefully I'll stick to time, and understanding self. We operate under a Chatham House rule regime, so that things that are said in the room stay in the room, which gives the presenters really a lot of comfort around being quite honest about their own leadership journeys. So I moved on to the next slide. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We also talk about fostering connections. So as I've talked about before with the combined program days, so we want to make sure as part of our role is if you're going to be a leader in your communities, you need to be able to connect with a lot of people that in your own workplace you may not have connected with. So your program does that to some degree. Your speakers that you're exposed to do to another degree. Our combined programs days do. And then where we're moving to in the future is an online portal for people to be able to connect and share experiences through communities of practice. We offer statewide professional development opportunities. This is a photo of our summit that we held in Geelong last year. So we want to make sure that we provide a statewide opportunity in a regional location every year for the public to attend. I'll talk a little bit more about that because our next one's coming up very shortly, so I'll talk to you about that later on. And we have, as I said before, we have a number of enhancements through some key partnerships, such as the Australian Institute of Company Directors, such as some of our universities. A number of the universities offer, as part of your year-long journey in our programs, a unit towards their MBA. So there's a nice little recognition there that you can go on to further studies. And we're currently in the process of developing a partnership with the Victorian Local Governance Association so that we can build a bridge around people who might be aspiring to run for council elections and how we can actually help to orchestrate that. So I'm going to have a little break in a sec from talking, and I just want to give you a couple of videos, as I said before, around some of our graduates' journeys. So one of the other things that I think it goes without saying is we're giving them the confidence to do things. They're giving them the confidence and optimism while we are generating what the outcomes look like. So I'm going to shortly show you a video from Amanda Jean White, AJ, as she's nicely refers herself to. I met AJ in 2015. She was one of our inaugural Dennis Tricks Young Regional Scholarship recipient. It was the first year we introduced it. I don't think she says it in this video, but I always remember her. She came to the Williamson Foundation to tell her story because they were the ones that sponsored her place in the program. And she starts off saying how she always wanted to be a marine biologist, and then it didn't take long for her to realise that not everyone can swim with dolphins, and so she had to change her thinking, and she became a speech pathologist. And she grew up in Shepparton but then left Shepparton to go to university, as most regional people do. They leave their regional towns, go to university, but she chose to come back, and this is her story.
My name's Amanda Jean White, and I was one of the lucky recipients of the Dennis Tricks Young Regional Community Leader Scholarships last year, enabling me to participate in the Fairly Leadership Team. The benefits of my participation in this leadership program are endless. However, I wanted to highlight a few positives that I have experienced from my leadership journey thus far. Benefits from collaborating and learning from like-minded individuals. Also, growth from both a professional and personal level. New and extended skills in terms of the broader issues happening in the Greater Shepparton area. Empowerment in terms of maintaining a lifelong commitment to community leadership, and also the program has provided me with an array of networks in which to do so. My biggest career goal and achievement post conclusion of the leadership program was obtaining my permanent position within Golden Valley Health as a speech pathology manager. My role as the manager is to lead and manage the speech pathology department to ensure that our services are delivered are of a high quality, evidence-based, responsive to community needs, and also ensuring that our patients obtain the highest outcomes possible. Likewise, as a speech pathology manager, I need to ensure that the team is working within its allocated budget and resources, and also that we're aligned with the organisational values, strategic plan and overall vision. From a community perspective, I'm also a volunteer for Meals on Wheels through home and community care. Not only do we deliver the meals to community members within their home, but we play an integral role to ensure that if patients are suffering from any medical conditions, we can assist them and let our supervisors know to ensure they get the best attention and preventing hospitalisation or in some cases permanent care. I also work as a volunteer supporting local primary schools with reading in early years during and after school hours, because education is another one of my passions. In closing, I believe my leadership journey is an example of why businesses should invest in a leadership capacity building for their staff and teams within their organisation. You can see that Golden Valley Health has greatly benefited from not only my professional development and shaping of my skills into a managerial position within their organisation. However, the social and economic impact that my skills are having on volunteering and providing leadership also into my local community. Thanks for your time.
That's AJ. Now, I mentioned when she presented to the Williamson Foundation, not long after she started talking about that you've just heard, she burst into tears, and it was the most profound impact on everyone in the room because the journey that she'd been on had such a big impact on her, both personally and professionally. And so I always tell her that I tell this story of her breaking down into tears, but it was quite a moving moment for all of us. So that's one example of why we believe developing in leaders. And what AJ didn't tell you there was she was a contractor at the time with Golden Valley Health. They didn't invest in leadership development for their contractors. So she got the scholarship and they did allow her the time to go to the program. And as she mentioned, as a result, she then got a permanent position and then got the managerial position. So over to another example. One of the things we do is we talk about empowering people to make a difference. And whilst I don't have a story today around going onto boards and committees, I want to introduce you to Councillor Min Poole. Now, Min I met in 2016 again. She had just completed the Northern Mallee Leaders program up in Mildura. And when Min commenced in the program, she was a real estate agent, or she was studying her real estate degree, and had no thoughts whatsoever about running for local council. And she went to Canberra and was suddenly so motivated that she wanted to run for the council elections in 2016 and actually got elected. Proudly enough, I'd like to say that across the state we had 66 of our graduates who nominated for council elections in 2016. 36 of those actually got elected, so 55% of them got elected. Another proud stat, 24 of those were females, so we're doing our bit for gender diversity, 12 were males, and 2 of those females were first-time councillors and were elected first-time mayors, and then they were re-elected last year as mayors. So if you don't think investing in leaders is a good thing for your businesses or your boards, then you need to look at some of these stats, because these people were not necessarily in formal leadership roles. So let's now listen to Min, and hers is only an audio, so, oops.
Hi, I'm Min. I applied for Northern Mallee Leaders to increase my regional and political knowledge to positively motivate our daughters and my real estate customers. This extremely well organised program provided me with incredible personal growth and professional development. I thoroughly enjoyed the exciting, challenging, actually energising cultural adventure. Being educated while increasing my confidence and diversifying my network. One of my highlights was learning about different personalities, how to relate accordingly in business and in the community generally. Another highlight was the amazing growth in the students of my community project. They also made a real economic improvement to a local business. One participant became school captain due to improved confidence and also received one of only 2 National Mine Shop Excellence Awards. The participants, schools and local business all benefited. So now, with support of my Rotary Club, I will continue to run this program. In Canberra, Kathy McGowan suggested we put our hand up for a job that looks hard. So I nominated as candidate in our local government election. So now I'm a councillor, portfolio holder and also chair of Mildura Cemetery Trust. Even though my work weren't supportive of either the Northern Mallee Leaders program or running for council, I soldiered on and have now also completed my full real estate licence course and improved my results big time. Both personally and professionally, I feel an increased respect from others as an alumni. Thank you, Northern Mallee Leaders program.
So I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that I'd talk a little bit about the measurements that we're now taking to demonstrate to our supporters and our potential supporters in the future around the impact that we're having. And so, as I'm sure you can all appreciate, that could be bigger than Ben-Hur, and so we have used our framework of our competencies and the regional themes that we do to develop a suite of outcomes measurements that we now measure against. So up until now, up until us having an integrated management system, which was only launched last year, it was quite an administrative burden for us to actually try and capture that across 10 organisations and concatenate it into a single or multiple infographics, etc. So we have commenced our journey now since 2015. Apologies if the green's a little bit hard to read, but we are measuring against our value propositions. So everything we do is measured against how we inspire confidence, so how are we measuring the confidence of our participants, how we empower people to make a change, how we foster connections, how we grow capability, and obviously we need to measure the quality of the programs. Our measurement scale is up to 5. So you can see here that Inspiring Confidence, this is an example of our Leadership Great South Coast program. Inspiring Confidence to make a difference is sitting at 4.4 for that 1 year being 2016. So we will measure the change over time, and the way we do that is we survey the participants before they start, at the end of their program year, 6-month follow-up, and we also, not all of them are doing this yet, but we have the facility to ask their employers or their team leaders to also do one at the beginning, the end, and 6-month follow-up. And the program managers do one at the end as well. So we're getting a true 360-degree feedback. Interestingly enough, we are seeing some results where the employers, those who are doing it, are actually seeing a stronger outcome than some of our participants are, which is great for us to convince businesses to keep sending their staff along and investing in us. So moving forward, we want to ensure that we continue to grow the outcomes measurement journey, and we need to continue to refine it. We are using this methodology at the moment for the next 4 years, so we've got some longitudinal data coming in, and then we will start to look at the next round of funding, assuming we get funding from our state government next time round, that we can then do the next lot of evaluation plans. This is Alpine Valleys, and I said before that we do a pre and post survey. So this is an example of their pre and post. So the orange charts, orange bars here are what the collective participants assess themselves against the competencies before the program, and then you can see the green is where they assess themselves at the end of the program. So we can start to see, and I'm not saying it's all positive. So we are seeing that some have gone down, and the programs need to assess whether that's a learning experience for participants who may not be not sure of how to assess their competency and may over-assess themselves or under-assess themselves accordingly. So that's up to them to actually work out the stuff from it. We also do an annual alumni survey. As I mentioned before, we have 3,500. Oh, before I do that, the little thing here, we talk about the regional theme, so that's our impact on the community. So each program day has a theme associated with it, so they might be focusing on tourism or infrastructure or our political landscape. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's what is the need of their particular region, and they are also measured. Last year we did an annual alumni survey, and we had about a 36% response rate. It was a little bit clunky, so we've learned some things from that we'll change next time round. But we do know that we get an average of 15 hours of unpaid voluntary work per month from our alumni. That equates to about $28.3 million worth of economic savings to organisations and to government in particular. So we estimate that as a 1 to 3 cost-benefit ratio. So for every dollar we get in, there's a $3 return. I'm ahead of time, you'll be all pleased to know. So I mentioned before we have an annual summit, so we've got our annual summit coming up this year. It is in Ballarat. Our remit is to ensure that our summits are in a regional town and that they're affordable. They're a one-day summit quite deliberately so that you don't have to spend copious amounts of money going overnight, and they run only from 10 till 4, so it allows people that time to travel. This year it's in Ballarat. It's called Thriving Leadership for Thriving Communities. I've put it in there so you can have a look at the website. It's on the 1st of May. It is in the beautiful Sovereign Hill Outdoor Museum. If you haven't been to Sovereign Hill lately, get a ticket because you get entry to the museum as well, and there's an hour at the end of the day to go and explore the museum. Before I hand over to questions, I've just got some final reflections from another Northern Mallee Leaders graduate who graduated last year, and her name is Bianca Spooner, and I'm going to let her tell her story and then I'll take any questions.
So here we are in a digital storytelling workshop
sound, guys.
And I have to have a finished product
Local
at its
business.
end. The all-familiar feeling of fear, doubt, and resistance arises in my ability to do this. What I'm reminded of right now is something I wrote down on a piece of paper at the beginning of the Northern Mallee Leaders Program. How I want to learn to combine being active with the passive. How do I get beyond the potential of things? How do I actually connect with community? The Northern Mallee Leaders Program journey has provided so many opportunities throughout the program year for me to step beyond potential. I've learnt that true leadership is the moment where you step up, putting aside that gut or throat feeling of nerves, fear, or hesitation, and taking the lead in sharing, encouraging, and helping out, in speaking with people, in introducing myself, in doing things I wouldn't ordinarily do, of becoming familiar with that sensation of stepping out of comfort zones. There is a body sensation that goes with taking the lead. It is a sensation of letting go and surging forward in step with the moment. It is really powerful, totally spontaneous, and naturally brings about an uplifting connection with people, places, and situations. Becoming familiar with the sensation and experience of taking the lead in the moment has significantly changed my view and approach in life, in the workplace, and in the community.
So just finishing up on that story about the bus breaking down, we quite often, as part of the leadership journey that they go on, take every opportunity as a leadership opportunity. So, of course, the bus breaking down is a great opportunity to discuss, as leaders, what will we do now. So, thank you. That's all I have, unless we have some questions. Yes. Oh, there's a roving mic, so we just need to wait for that to come around, if we don't mind.
I have a couple and they're based around the same theme. I absolutely am passionate about what you're doing, I just need to say.
Thank you.
But I'm just wondering how many people have come through the programs with visible or invisible disabilities? Are you able to modify your programs? And you said that you work with businesses, do you also approach disability services and organisations, because people with disabilities are isolated and more isolated within regional areas? And being that my focus, I noticed that the word disability was missing from the region themes.
Yeah. Thank you. Great question. So the short answer is yes, we do work with people with disabilities. The long answer is it's probably our area we need to focus much more strongly at. We've had a number of programs that have certainly a lot more success than some of our others, we've had a number of programs who've had, we had a vision impaired young man who did the Gippsland program last year, and so they had to modify their program, and actually I learnt something from it as well, because when he got the survey, it actually wouldn't interact with his recording or his transfer system that he uses to be able to put the answers in. So he gave us some feedback. So we're learning. We're not perfect at it. We have worked and had a number of discussions with Women from Disability Association in Melbourne. They run a disability program in some of our regions, and we're working with them to see how we can bridge and build a pathway through there. We've had a number of programs who've specifically run disability-specific programs. Our biggest aim is that we do want to be able to integrate into our flagship programs more of the disability sector. But our problem is, I guess, is an awareness and education of us who run programs of who to connect with and how to work through those. We wouldn't anticipate for one minute that we are perfect at it, but we certainly recognise that as an area that we need to focus on a little bit more. Yeah, we can talk later. Yeah. did it answer both your questions? Disability on the themes level. We don't single it out because it comes across a lot of different themes. So for transport, for example, when they talk about a regional theme around transportation, they would cover disability in that. It's also covered in the diversity and inclusion theme. Yeah. Great questions, thank you. I think there was another one, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you, Katrina, for your presentation today. It's fascinating. My name's Tamara Jungworth, and I'm the Vice President of the Victorian Association of Performing Arts Centres. So we have 60 members across the state, and we represent theatre managers across the state, including many, many regional areas. Next week I'm going off to our state meeting. So it appears to me that your leadership program might be of interest to our members.
Definitely.
And they are leaders in their community, bringing art, culture, social connection and ideas into regional areas. So we're really debunking the theory that everything of interest happens in Melbourne, although Melbourne is, of course, an interesting city. Mm-hmm. So my question is about the application process for regional leaders to do this course and any cost that's involved in doing the course. And then I suppose as a subcategory, so that question relates to the annual program, and then another question would be the same but relating to your one-day meeting coming up.
Sure, that was about 10 questions in one, so if I forget something, just let me know or come and talk to me during a break. As I mentioned before, we have a number of scholarships. So we've just recently come off the back of the Williamson Foundation, who provided us a 3-year grant, and we're now into our second round of that, where specifically they gave us a scholarship for each program for every year to allow someone from the arts or environmental sector to actually participate in our programs. So I didn't bring it up today, but I'm more than happy to show it with you that a number of those artists who did the programs then helped to develop the arts projects that were developed and implemented as part of their community project outcomes. So the programs themselves work really hard. All of them have an app on their application program. Do you wish to be considered for a scholarship? So by ticking that, then they work really hard to try and find a scholarship for them. So the short answer is yes, there's scholarships available. So as I said before, price should be no barrier for anyone participating in our programs. The prices vary depending on the program, and that a lot does depend on those who go to Canberra and how they get to Canberra. But they are all on the website, but I can talk to you about that a little bit later if you like, on the cost things. And the one-day events, again, when we're moving to this portal I was talking about before, where we're going to allow opportunities to have some online training one-day events, so that's where we're heading next for some of these alumni events. Again, we offer alumni events at a reduced rate to others, same as we do for our summits, where there's an alumni rate, a not-for-profit rate and a corporate rate. Again, our view is to ensure that we make sure that they're accessible with the remit that they're run in regions. So happy to chat. Did that answer all of the questions? We'll catch up during the break. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry to do that.
That's all right.
So once again, could you thank Katrina for a very enlightening topic there.